I wasn't supposed to see it, but I did. And if this upload disappears, you'll know why. That's not some dramatic clickbait line. It's a warning, because what I stumbled across wasn't just another creepy rumor from some dusty forum. This was real. A piece of something that was never meant for kids to watch, never meant for anyone to watch. And the deeper I dug, the more I realized there's a reason Nickelodeon tried to bury it. Think back for a second to SpongeBob SquarePants. Bright colors, goofy laughs, that theme song that used to get stuck in your head during Saturday morning cartoons. For most of us, SpongeBob is childhood bottled into a sponge, the innocence of a pineapple under the sea where nothing too bad could ever happen. But imagine, just imagine, peeling that layer of fun away, only to find something rotten festering beneath it. That's what I found. And trust me, once I tell you, you'll never look at SpongeBob the same way again. At first I thought it was some kind of fan-made parody. You know, one of those messed up internet edits people throw together to shock and gross you out. But this was different. The tone, the animation, even the way the characters moved, it was official. It felt like Nickelodeon's real animators had made it. Which made it so much worse, because that meant they had written it, drawn it, produced it, and then decided it could never ever air. And yet somehow I saw it. I don't know how long I'll be able to keep this up. If this video gets flagged, if it vanishes without a trace, at least you'll understand why. I'm risking a lot just by talking about it. But the truth is burning a hole in my brain. I can't carry this alone anymore. SpongeBob wasn't just a cartoon to me. It was a kind of ritual. I can still picture myself sprawled out on the carpet, cereal bowl sweating onto the rug, Nickelodeon blasting from the old box TV. My parents would argue in the kitchen, their voices muffled, but none of that mattered once I heard that opening theme. Are you ready, kids? It drowned everything out. For 22 minutes I was safe. That show was my anchor, my escape hatch into a world where the worst thing that could happen was Squidward getting splattered with pies or plankton. Hatching another doomed plan. SpongeBob's laugh was obnoxious to everyone else in my house, but to me it was like a signal you can breathe now. And I know I'm not alone in that. For an entire generation, SpongeBob is practically stitched into our DNA. It's inside our jokes, our memes, our language. People still quote lines like scripture. The sponge in the pineapple wasn't just a character. He was part of us. But time changes the way you look at things. When I rewatched the show as I got older, I started noticing things I'd missed. Weird details in the backgrounds. Strange, almost uncomfortable expressions on the characters' faces during certain episodes. Little moments that seemed off, but I brushed them aside. I told myself it was just the animation style, or maybe I was overthinking it. Because SpongeBob was safe. SpongeBob was innocent, right? Except the older I got, the harder it was to shake that creeping sense that there was something beneath the surface. Like the show wasn't just mindless fun. That it was hiding something darker, something we weren't meant to see. And that's when I started hearing whispers online. I was browsing forums late at night, rabbit holes of nostalgia where fans debated which episodes were the funniest or most underrated. But buried in those threads were other posts. Ones that didn't fit the cheerful tone. People claimed they'd seen things, frames, files, unfinished clips. Lost SpongeBob media, they called it. Supposed episodes that never aired, or versions of existing episodes with extra scenes cut for being too disturbing. Most fans dismissed them as hoaxes, internet myths, the same kind of nonsense as Bloody Mary or Polybius. A scary story passed around for laughs. And for the most part, I did too. I mean, come on. Nickelodeon hiding some Nightmare Fuel episode in their vault. It sounded ridiculous. But some of the details stuck with me. The way people described certain scenes with uncanny precision. The way different posts from different users lined up in eerie ways. It wasn't like normal fan speculation. It felt coordinated. Like too many people knew too much for it all to be fake. At first, I laughed it off. But the more I thought about it, the more it gnawed at me. Because SpongeBob had always been the one safe thing in my life. And the idea that there was some forbidden, corrupted version lurking in the shadows, it didn't just sound scary. It sounded personal. So I started digging. searching archives, joining sketchy Discord servers, scrolling through pages that felt like they hadn't been touched since the early 2000s. Every breadcrumb pulled me deeper. Every vague reference made me hungrier for proof. And eventually I found it. Not the file itself, not yet, but the first trace. The first sign that something was really there. That's how I first heard whispers about the tape. Because the file, the episode, they called it something simple. Just a single word. But that word carried a weight that made my skin crawl. And the images, they've been etched into my mind in a way that no amount of sleep or alcohol can scrub away. You might think you're ready to hear this. You might think it's just a cartoon, how bad could it be? But once I start describing what I saw, you'll wish you could take it back. You'll wish you could erase it the way Nickelodeon tried to erase it from existence. And yet, here you are. Still listening, still curious. So let me rewind. Let me tell you how I found it, how an ordinary night spiraled into something I'll never escape. Obsession is a strange thing. It doesn't start with fireworks, it starts with curiosity. A late-night search. A single thread you can't stop clicking. Before long, the thread wraps around you, pulling tighter, until you don't even remember when you stopped being in control. That's how it felt with the SpongeBob whispers. At first, I just browsed out of boredom, scrolling through grainy screenshots people swore were leaked frames. Half of them were obvious Photoshop jobs. SpongeBob with red eyes, Patrick with a knife, the kind of edgy edits kids make when they're bored. But some were different. There were frames where SpongeBob's smile looked wrong, not creepy fan eat it wrong. Wrong in a way that felt real, his teeth too sharp, his eyes unfocused like they weren't looking at anything, or worse, like they were looking past the screen. One user swore the frames weren't edits at all, but caps from a finalized build that was buried and never aired. I couldn't stop thinking about that phrase, a finalized build. So I dug deeper. I combed through abandoned Nickelodeon fan sites, clicked broken links that spat out nothing but 404 errors, trawled through media archives that hadn't been updated since 2004. I even started messaging private collectors, the kind who sell banned commercials, unreleased pilots, weird VHS tapes pulled from dumpsters behind studios. Most ignored me. A few laughed me off. But one night, buried in a sketchy old forum thread about lost tunes, someone finally replied. The username was Real Truth, and their profile picture was just a static TV screen. Their message was short. I have what you're looking for, but you won't want it once you see it. Attached was a screenshot of a file directory. One folder stood out, SB129 Alta Final. MOV SB129. Real SpongeBob fans know that one. It's an early episode where Squidward time travels. But Alta Final, that didn't exist anywhere. Not on Nickelodeon's archives, not in fan discussions, not even in the deepest wiki dives. I messaged them back immediately, asking if it was a hoax. Their reply came hours later, almost like they wanted me to sweat. It's real. But I'm warning you, don't watch it all the way through. That should have been enough to make me stop. But you know how the human brain works. Tell us not to do something, and it becomes impossible to resist. I told myself it was just some edgy fan edit, another creepypasta someone was trying to push. But the way they worded it, don't watch it all the way through, that lodged itself in my head. So I asked how much. They didn't want money. Not exactly. Instead, they gave me a link, an old peer-to-peer file sharing site I hadn't seen since the early 2000s. It felt like opening a time capsule from the Wild West days of the internet. No encryption, no safety nets. Just raw trading. The file was there waiting. Only 212 megabytes. Too small for a full episode, which made me think it was either compressed or something else entirely. Before I could click download, a final message popped up. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. People think it's just a cartoon. It isn't. I hesitated just for a second. Then I hit download. It finished in less than a minute. When I checked my desktop, the icon looked wrong. Not corrupted, not broken. Just wrong. It was the standard MOV file icon, but the color seemed slightly off, like someone had drained the warmth out of it. The title read SB129 Alta Final. My hands were actually shaking. Over a cartoon file. I told myself it was ridiculous, that I was being dramatic, that there was no possible way a SpongeBob episode, no matter how lost or altered, could actually scare me. But deep down, I was already afraid, because I couldn't stop thinking about that warning. Don't watch it all the way through. What could possibly be so disturbing in a children's cartoon that even a stranger on the internet felt the need to warn me? I'll tell you what I saw, but not all at once. You need to understand how it started, because the moment I hit play, I realized this wasn't just some fake edit. This was something else, something I was never supposed to have, and that's when the tape began. At first, it looked like any other SpongeBob episode. The familiar burst of blue sky, the flowers drifting lazily in the water, the pineapple sitting cheerfully in the middle of Bikini Bottom. I almost laughed at myself for getting worked up. The theme song kicked in, and I found myself mouthing along automatically. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Like muscle memory from childhood. The colors were bright, the animation crisp, the voices exactly how I remembered them. For a moment I was that kid again, lying on the carpet with my cereal bowl, letting the world melt away. But then the cracks started to show. The music, it was off. Not wrong enough to notice immediately, but just slightly sharp, like the instruments were a half step out of tune. SpongeBob's laugh in the opening was a fraction too long, echoing faintly after it should have cut off. It reminded me of a YouTube video I once saw where someone slowed a song down by just a few percent. Familiar but uncanny. When the opening sequence ended, the title card flashed up, SSB129, just like the real episode, but the font looked thinner, stretched, and the background color bled at the edges. It was like watching an old VHS tape where the calibration had slipped. Still, nothing outright disturbing. Nothing that justified the warning. The episode began with Squidward in his house, practicing his clarinet, normal enough. But the shot didn't cut the way it should. Normally, SpongeBob interrupts almost immediately, barging in with that wide, clueless grin. Here, the camera lingered on Squidward too long. His eyes were closed, his body stiff, and the sound of the clarinet was wrong. It wasn't the usual squeaky honk, but low, broken notes wheezing like someone struggling to breathe. I shifted in my chair. Finally, SpongeBob knocked at the door. But even that felt wrong. The knock was too slow, each rap drawn out, hollow, echoing in a way that didn't match the scene. When Squidward shouted, "What is it now, SpongeBob?" His voice cracked, like the actor had screamed the line so many times the sound engineer layered the takes, overlapping slightly. The laugh track hit then, but it wasn't the usual canned laughter. It was distorted, as though filtered through static, and it lingered far too long. The laughter didn't fade. It cut off, suddenly, like someone hitting a switch. SpongeBob finally entered, but when he smiled, his teeth looked sharper. Not knives, not exaggerated, just a little too pointed, like a human smile that doesn't quite fit the face. That was when I felt it, the creeping realization that this wasn't a glitch or bad compression or my imagination. It was deliberate. Whoever made this wanted it to feel wrong, and then the first thing happened that I can't explain. At first, I thought it was just a weird opening. A bad cut. Some intern messing with a build that was never supposed to leave the studio. But then the episode started to shift in ways I couldn't ignore. SpongeBob didn't bounce around like he usually did. He shuffled. His movements were slower, heavy, like he was underwater in a way he shouldn't have been. Even his voice sounded drained. Instead of that chirpy, high-pitched laugh, his tone was flat, almost tired. Squidward, on the other hand, didn't seem angry so much as bitter. His lines weren't jokes anymore. They were mumbled under his breath, too quiet at first, but loud enough if you leaned in. "West of air. Keep smiling, Sponge. It won't last, I froze." That wasn't part of SB29. Those weren't throwaway gags. They sounded like things someone really thought about SpongeBob. The backgrounds looked normal at first, but then I noticed small shifts. The colors dulled. The outlines grew thinner. The longer the scene lingered, the more it looked like Bikini Bottom was decaying. The flowers in the water above moved more slowly, like they were wilting. Then came the first whisper. It wasn't SpongeBob or Squidward. Not really. The sound didn't match their mouths. As SpongeBob tried to cheerfully suggest jellyfishing, another voice slid in underneath, almost imperceptible. "You're still watching." I actually pulled off my headphones. My heart thumped so hard I thought I imagined it. But when I rewound, it was there. Faint, buried, but there. I tried to laugh it off, creepy Easter egg. Some audio engineer screwing around, but then Squidward's next line, one I knew wasn't in the real episode, landed like a punch. "Why don't you stop looking at us?" It wasn't shouted. It wasn't played for laughs. It was whispered directly into the mic, like it wasn't meant for SpongeBob at all. Like it was meant for me. The more I watched, the worse it got. SpongeBob's eyes started to glaze over. His grin stretched, but his body slumped like a marionette with cut strings. When he blinked, the sound effect was wrong, too sharp, like a camera shutter snapping in the frames. God, the frames. Every so often, in between normal shots, there'd be a single still image that didn't belong. Not for long, not even a full second, but enough to register. Hyper-realistic images. SpongeBob's pores blown up in grotesque detail, dripping with something that looked like pus. Squidward's face, drawn with lines so sharp and wrinkled he looked decades older. The background empty, as if the whole ocean had drained away. It was like the animators switched from cartoon to oil painting horror, then back again before your brain could fully process it. I paused one of them. I wish I hadn't. The frame showed SpongeBob sitting at his kitchen table. But the kitchen was gone, no walls, no furniture, nothing. Just him in darkness. His eyes weren't cartoon eyes anymore. They were photographs, hyper, real, bloodshot, too human for his face, and they were looking directly into the camera, directly at me. I couldn't breathe. I unpaused, desperate to get past it, but the whispers returned, layered now, voices stacked over voices. Too many to count, too low to make out clearly. Every so often, though, a word jumped through the noise. Feed, stay, watching, and then, faintly, a moose see you. I slammed my laptop shut. My hands were shaking, sweat pooling under my palms. For a moment I sat there in silence, heart racing. It was just a cartoon, just a corrupted file, but deep down, I felt something I'd never felt before while watching SpongeBob. Like the show wasn't something I was watching. Like it was something watching me. Tell me, have you ever felt that? That sensation when your favorite show lingers too long on a character's eyes, or when you swear a line wasn't there the first time you watched? Have you ever caught yourself staring back? Because that's what this was. It wasn't an episode, it was a mirror. I thought about deleting the file right then, but curiosity has teeth. It pulls at you, drags you deeper. I needed to know what happened next, needed to see how far the rot went. So I opened the laptop again, and that's when the full reveal of the forbidden frames began. The deeper the episode went, the less it resembled SpongeBob at all. The story disintegrated, scenes no longer followed each other in sequence. Dialogue slipped into murmurs, then static, then silence. What remained were images. The first was Bikini Bottom, but not the Bikini Bottom I remembered. The cheerful little town was in ruins. Buildings half collapsed, coral bleached white, the ground littered with debris. The colors were still Nickelodeon, bright, that familiar saturated palette, but twisted. The pinks were raw and fleshy. The blues were the bruised color of rotting skin. And in the streets lay bodies. They were drawn in the same cartoon style, but slumped unnaturally, their limbs bent at sick angles. Fish I recognized from background gags, characters I'd laughed at as a kid, were sprawled lifeless, their eyes X'd out. Except the X's weren't cute. They were jagged, carved in with something sharp. The screen flickered, and suddenly there was a shot of SpongeBob himself, standing in the middle of the carnage. His smile was gone. His mouth hung slack, his eyes dull and staring. Behind him the ruins stretched into black nothing, and then came the splice. It was quick, barely half a second, but enough. Not animation anymore. Real footage. I saw what looked like a grainy home video clip, a room with peeling wallpaper, a single chair overturned in the corner. On the floor was a shape, a body. I blinked, frozen. The next frame cut back to animation. Patrick's rock cracked open like an egg, the inside scorched black. But again a splice of reality forced its way in. A drowned body this time. Bloated skin, pale and waxy, hair floating in the water. I wanted to tell myself it was fake, some grotesque fan edit. But the detail was too real, too sharp. Whoever made this had access to footage no ordinary person should. The cartoon and the real blood together. Squidward walking through streets lined with corpses. A pan across Bikini Bottom revealing not fish, but human figures in the background. Faceless, limp, their skin the wrong color. The cheery sound effects were still there. The bubble pops, the transition splashes, but laid over images that made my stomach twist. Then came the frame. I shouldn't even call it a frame. It was the frame. I froze it by accident when my finger slipped on the keyboard. And for a long time I just stared. It showed SpongeBob, close up, not goofy, not sad, just staring. His face was drawn in that grotesque hyper-realistic detail again. Every pore like a crater, his teeth jagged and wet. But his eyes weren't just detailed. They were photographs. Human eyes, bloodshot and wet, stitched into the cartoon face. And in the reflection of those eyes, no, I can't describe what I saw there. Some things aren't meant to be put into words. You'll just have to believe me when I say this, it wasn't part of the cartoon. It wasn't part of any show. It was something else. Something that shouldn't exist. I should have stopped there. Closed the laptop, deleted the file, burned the hard drive if I had to. But that's the thing about forbidden knowledge. Once you have a taste, it owns you, so I kept going. I didn't stop. I couldn't. The deeper I went, the less it felt like watching a cartoon, and the more it felt like something was watching me back. At first, it was subtle. SpongeBob's gaze seemed to hold a second too long, his pupils following the camera in ways that shouldn't have been possible in hand-drawn frames. His smile returned. Not the goofy grin I grew up with, but a slow, deliberate curl of the lips. And then he spoke, not to Squidward, not to Patrick, not to anyone in Bikini Bottom. To me. Why are you still watching? I ripped my headphones off so fast they clattered to the floor. But even without them, I swore I heard the line echoing faintly from my laptop speakers. The sound design spiraled from there. Every noise was distorted, too loud, too sharp, layered with faint static that crawled under my skin. Every laugh track felt like screaming buried under canned joy. Every bubble pop snapped like bone. And underneath it all, that low drone, a frequency that made the room feel smaller, tighter. I pressed my palms to my ears, but it didn't matter. The sound was inside me. I felt it vibrating in my teeth, in my chest, in the pit of my stomach. I started to feel sick. Nausea crept over me in waves. My hands shook as I hovered over the trackpad, torn between slamming the lid shut or letting the episode run its course. I don't know why I chose the second option. Maybe curiosity, maybe fear, maybe both. The whispers came back, layered, suffocating. But this time I could make out the words more clearly. You shouldn't be here. Stop looking. We see you. And then SpongeBob again, his face filling the screen, hyper, detailed and dripping. His eyes weren't just human this time. They were aware. You're still here, he said. Good. I had to pause it. I couldn't take another second. My reflection stared back at me from the frozen frame on the screen, warped by the glow of his two human eyes. That's when I said it out loud, to no one but myself, to the empty room. I know this sounds fake, but it's not, and I meant it. Every instinct in me screamed that this wasn't just a corrupted file, or a fan edit, or some edgy internet hoax. This was something else. Something parasitic, using the language of a children's cartoon as camouflage. Something alive. I should have stopped. I should have closed my laptop and walked away. But here's the thing, you don't stop. Once you've seen it, it hooks into you. Every unanswered question becomes a chain around your neck, pulling you further down. And the worst part, I knew there was still more. I hadn't reached the end, because buried in all that noise of static, I caught a glimpse of something. A transition card. That familiar splash of blue with the bubbly text, but warped, melted, and the words that appeared on it weren't funny at all. They read final scene. Even now, just writing those words makes my stomach twist. Because I know what came after. And then came the ending. It opened with silence. No Johnny Ukulele. No bubbly theme song. Just a dim, colorless ocean floor stretching out into nothing. The kind of silence that isn't really silence because underneath it, there's still something breathing. And then SpongeBob appeared. Not in his pineapple house, not in the Krusty Krab, not even with Patrick. Just walking. alone. His shoes scraped against the sand with every step, the sound exaggerated, dragging, scuff, scuff, over and over. At first, I thought it was some kind of long-establishing shot, maybe setting up a joke. But he didn't stop. He didn't even look around. He just kept walking into the darkness, shoulders slumped, arms swinging limply by his sides. The animation was wrong again, too fluid, too real. The longer I watched, the more it felt like they weren't animating SpongeBob at all, but recording him. Like I was watching something that was really happening, somewhere deep under the ocean. And then I heard it. Children's laughter. At least, that's what it was supposed to be. But it was reversed, warped into a chorus of voices dragging backward through time. The laughter twisted into wails, rising and falling like waves against the walls of my skull. Still, SpongeBob kept walking. The background behind him didn't change, but I swear he was moving further and further away from anything familiar. The sand got darker. The water around him thickened, turning black. I leaned in closer, even though every nerve in me was telling me not to. My chest felt heavy, like the deeper he went, the deeper I was sinking with him. Minutes passed. Or maybe it was seconds. The episode had lost all sense of pacing, of rhythm, of structure. Time felt wrong. Finally, SpongeBob slowed. He lifted his head for the first time, and he looked straight at me. The details of his face sharpened in an instant. His eyes weren't cartoon eyes anymore. They were pale, sunken, impossibly human. His spunky grin cracked upward, stretching wider than it should have. And then he whispered, "You're next." I froze. I couldn't breathe. The words weren't coming from my speakers. They were inside the room with me, right in my ear, like someone was standing just over my shoulder. Before I could react, the screen went black. The file didn't end normally. It didn't roll credits. It didn't even stop. The media player glitched, flickering error messages across my desktop. File corrupt. Unknown data stream. System instability detected. I sat there shaking, staring at my own reflection in the black screen. My face looked pale, stretched thin by the glow of the error messages. The worst part, I wanted to play it again. Even as bile rose in my throat, even as my hands trembled over the keyboard, something inside me whispered that I had to see more. That maybe if I replayed it, I'd catch details I missed. Maybe if I slowed it down frame by frame, I'd understand what it really was. But I couldn't. The file was gone, corrupted beyond repair, as if it had erased itself the moment the last word left SpongeBob's mouth, and I was left sitting there alone in the dark. Not just shaken, not just disturbed, but watched, because from that moment on, every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, still walking, still moving across that endless ocean floor, still getting closer, and deep down I knew the truth. He wasn't walking into the dark, he was walking toward me. I haven't slept right since that night. It's not just nightmares, though those come too, always with the same sound of wet footsteps dragging closer. It's the waking hours that are worse. The times when I know I'm awake, but reality keeps bending, shifting, tilting sideways just enough to make me question myself. The first sign came the very next evening. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, trying to pretend the file hadn't happened, when the TV in the living room turned on by itself. No remote, no timer, nothing. Just static filling the apartment with a gray hiss. I crept out, half expecting a power surge or a glitch. But there wasn't static, there was laughter. That same reversed, suffocating laughter from the final scene. Children's voices, stretched backwards, spilling out into my dark living room. I yanked the plug straight out of the wall, but the screen stayed on for a full 5 seconds longer, glowing against my face like it was alive. Since then, it hasn't stopped. Sometimes it's the TV, sometimes it's my laptop, booting up in the middle of the night, no matter how many times I shut it down. Once, I swear I heard the faint theme song drifting from the speakers, but slowed to the point where every note groaned like a funeral dirge. And then came the emails. At first they were blank. No subject line, no body text, just a sender marked unknown. Then the messages changed. 2 words typed in a crooked, uneven font: "Stop talking." I deleted them, blocked everything. But they keep coming. Every night one new email. The same 2 words: "Stop talking." And yet, here I am, talking, because I need you to understand something. I don't think this is just about me anymore. That episode, whatever it was, whatever made it, doesn't want to be buried. It wants to spread. And by watching it, by listening to me talk about it, you might already be part of it too. So let me ask you, if your TV flickers on tonight, if you hear laughter in the static, or see something in the corner of your screen staring back, don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it. And if it's already happened to you, if you've seen anything like what I've just described, tell me. Comment below. I need to know I'm not the only one. I need proof that this isn't just unraveling in my head. Because every night I hear him getting closer. Scuff, scuff, that dragging sound of his shoes scraping the ocean floor. And I know that one day soon, he won't stop at the edge of the screen. And if this account goes dark, if my uploads suddenly disappear, you'll know why. If you've stayed with me this long, then you understand why I couldn't keep this to myself. I open with a confession and I'll end with one too. I wasn't supposed to see that episode. I wasn't supposed to talk about it. And the longer I've kept it, the heavier it's become, like the file itself is alive, pressing against my chest, begging to be released. But here's the part that terrifies me most. That tape, that episode, it wasn't unique. I've dug deeper since that night and I wish I hadn't. Buried in old threads, locked behind paywalled forums, whispered about on accounts that vanish overnight, there are mentions of others, other shows, other lost files. Some claim there's a catalog of them, archived somewhere on servers no one's supposed to access. Nickelodeon wasn't the only one, and if that's true, then what I saw is just one piece of something bigger, something spreading. Every time I replay those words in my head, "You're next," I wonder if SpongeBob was warning me or promising me, and I wonder what happens when the next person stumbles across another hidden episode. So if you're watching this and somehow, someday, you find a file you're not supposed to, don't open it. Don't download it. Don't even touch it. Because once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Once you've heard that laughter, it follows you. And once you hear the dragging footsteps, it's already too late. I know some of you won't listen. Some of you will go looking anyway, because curiosity is stronger than fear. Maybe that's why these things exist in the first place, because they know we can't look away. We're addicted to forbidden knowledge. We want to be the first to see the thing nobody else should. But that's how it gets you. That's how it got me. And if this video is the last thing I ever post, you'll know why.